Hello and welcome to another edition of Foreign Dispatches, the program that takes you around the world in 25 minutes. I'm Teniola Oyetayo. On the program this week, European Parliament shaken by Qatar corruption scandal, plus a major search and rescue operation launched after small migrant boat sinks off the English Channel. The European Parliament this week was rocked by the biggest scandal in its history after Belgian prosecutors announced they had charged 4 people with corruption, money laundering and participation in a criminal organization as part of an investigation into attempts by Qatar to buy influence in the Assembly.
Amendment 1 CP, who's in favour?
The allegations revolve around World Cup host Qatar, claiming it had lavished cash and gifts on European Parliament officials to influence decision-making. Police have arrested several people charged with participation in a criminal organization, money laundering and corruption. One of them is Eva Kaili, the European Parliament's vice president, who has now been stripped of her role. In a November debate, Kaili defended Qatar's actions, calling the country a front-runner in labour rights.
I alone said that Qatar is a front-runner in labour rights, abolishing kafala, introducing minimum wage, despite the challenges that even European companies are denying to enforce these laws. They committed to a vision by choice and they opened to the world. Still some here are calling to discriminate them. They bully them and they accuse everyone that talks to them or engages of corruption. But still they take their gas. Still they have their companies profiting billions there.
MEPs voted by 625 to 1 to strip Kaili of her role as one of its 14 vice presidents on Tuesday. Greek authorities have also frozen assets belonging to Kaili, her husband, and immediate family members. She has denied involvement in the alleged bribery scandal. In light of the allegations, Parliament leader Roberta Metsola spoke of difficult days for European democracy.
Make no mistake, the European Parliament, dear colleagues, is under attack. European democracy is under attack, and our way of open, free, democratic societies are under attack. The enemies of democracy, for whom the very existence of this Parliament is a threat, will stop at nothing. These malign actors linked to autocratic third countries have allegedly weaponized NGOs, unions, individuals, assistants and members of the European Parliament in an effort to subdue our processes. Their malicious plans failed.
European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen also voices concerns.
The allegations against the Vice President of the European Parliament are of utmost concern, very serious. It is a question of confidence of people into our institutions, and this confidence and trust into our institutions needs highest standards and of independence and integrity. For us, it is very critical to have not only strong rules, but the same rules also covering all the European institutions and not to allow for any kind of exemptions. So it's a matter of transparency, it's a matter of very clear rules, and all the European institutions should abide to the same rules that we put in place.
And EU lawmakers in Parliament call for more action to be taken against corruption.
Corruption is the biggest enemy of democracy. It undermines the freedom of speech. It breaks the trust of people have in their institutions of state. To be crystal clear, there is not any room for corruption in the Parliament or in other institutions of the European Union. The laws must be applied strictly and the prosecution has to be followed consequently.
We have to act, and we also have to put something in written to be clear about what we want, because we want a full inquiry into this matter. Everything has to come to the surface right now because, as people have said, trust has been broken. We have to have a dedicated position in the EP Bureau that is working on these reforms, that is working on anti-corruption, and we need to have more far-reaching measures like, for example, the reform of the lobby register, but also an ethics body that can make sure that we do everything in our power to present something like this in the future.
The allegations have cast a shadow over the role of lobbying groups at the European Parliament. A recommendation to allow visa-free travel to the EU for Qataris was set to be voted on by MEPs this week, but has now been shelved. Prosecutors say they had suspected for months that a Gulf state was trying to buy influence in Brussels. Prosecutors carried out a string of searches over several days and said cash worth about 600,000 euros had been found at the home of one suspect, 150,000 euros at the flat of an MEP, and 750,000 euros in a suitcase in a Brussels hotel room. Qatar has denied involvement and any wrongdoing. The investigation comes as Qatar is in the global spotlight while it hosts the World Cup, amid criticism from human rights groups, which the country also rejects.
And still on the issue of corruption, South Africa has joined the rest of the world to mark the International Anti-Corruption Day, which was hosted by the country's Public Service Commission at the University of South Africa in Pretoria. The theme of the event was the cost of failure of governance and ethics in the public service, a collective response to tackle the scourge of corruption in the public sector. Many calls were made for the protection and support of whistleblowers whose brave actions have uncovered a lot of corrupt practices, sometimes at the risk of the loss of their jobs and lives. Our South Africa Bureau Chief, Betty Dibia, reports.
Nearly 2 decades since the adoption of the United Nations Convention Against Corruption, the battle against corruption still rages, going down memory lane to how South Africa's constitutional democracy came to be. The chairman of the country's Public Service Commission, Professor Somadoda Fikeni, says every report on corruption so far indicate the weaknesses in the public sector.
Whilst we are still grappling with the legacy of colonialism and apartheid, pervasive corruption has now emerged as a powerful force with just the same destructive effect as colonialism and apartheid. This now is the new frontier of the struggle to once again ensure that the few do not take common goods and services so that they serve their own interests.
There were several messages from various UN agencies on why the fight against corruption must not stop. Beyond government, Dr. Barnett Ndianabangi of the United Nations Population Fund highlighted the importance of every societal agency's input if more progress is to be made, from private business, civil society organizations, media, and to the people.
The heart of our responses and the key to their success are the people. The people of South Africa are South Africa's most precious resource. Young people have the most to lose, but they are the very people who have to find transformative solutions to corruption and hold leaders to account.
The leaders of the three arms of the South African government were invited to speak, but President Cyril Ramaphosa, who himself is working under a cloud of allegations of corruption in the Panapara farm scandal, opted to attend to the call of his ruling ANC at the last minute instead. So the Chief Justice, Raymond Zondo, quoting from a Constitutional Court judgment, outlined the impact of corruption on society.
This is what the court said, and I quote, "There can be no gainsaying that corruption threatens to fell at the knees virtually everything we hold dear and precious in our hard-won constitutional order. It blatantly undermines the democratic ethos, the institutions of democracy, the rule of law, and the foundational values of our nascent constitutional project.
Some of the comments we have made and that are being made in public, including through video clips about identification of wrong things, are interesting, saddening, but also are not helpful if they don't point out what's to be done in our families, where the campaign must begin, going upwards organizationally, that we stop corruption dead in its tracks. You can't keep quiet when your daughter or son comes in with a fancy gadget which you didn't buy. And they are not made to account for where it comes from.
To answer the Deputy Speaker of Parliament, Honourable Lechesa Tsenodi, former Public Protector Professor Thuli Madonsela suggested a new deal based on strengthened democratic governance, social justice, fundamental human rights, professionalizing corruption investigators, a Venice-styled commission to support Parliament, as well as the simplification of the Anti-Corruption Act, PRECA, so people will know that corruption goes beyond graft and bribery.
We need a new deal on socio-economic justice in this country. If we don't get that, we will not make progress on many issues around implementing our beautiful constitution, and it will continue to be seen by others as a Pockhampton village.
But with the old deal on ground so far, is there some progress at all?
We're actually not. 19 years after we have signed the United Nations Charter, we haven't actually won the war against corruption, and we are now here to ask ourselves what is going wrong.
I think we are winning the war against corruption. If each of us do our little bit, our own part, bit by bit, definitely we will make progress. That's my view.
Attendees read and signed the anti-corruption pledge with the hope that people would take it to heart. But a major outcome was the echoed call by all the speakers for more protection and financial support of whistleblowers, whom the South African State Capture Commission of Inquiry recommended be giving a percentage of funds recovered from proceeds of corruption.
And over in the United Kingdom, the government vowed this week to do whatever it takes to stop small migrant boats crossing the English Channel. This comes after at least 4 people died and more than 40 were saved after their vessels started sinking in the early hours of Wednesday. Record numbers of migrants have crossed the channel in small vessels in 2022. The government has announced a series of new measures to try to tackle the issue.
The major search and rescue operation was launched at around 3 a.m. on Wednesday off the coast of Kent by British and French authorities. The inflatable boat is believed to have been carrying almost 50 people. It capsized shortly after setting off from the coast of northern France.
I know that everyone in this House and across the country will join me in expressing our profound sadness and deepest sympathies for everyone affected by this terrible event. I know that they will also join me in offering our profound gratitude to those working on the search and rescue operation. It is not cruel or unkind to want to break the stranglehold of the criminal gangs who trade in human misery and who exploit our system and our laws.
This week's tragedy came just hours after the Prime Minister vowed to pass new laws to tackle illegal immigration and the small boats crisis.
So early next year, we will introduce new legislation to make unambiguously clear that if you enter the UK illegally, you should not be able to remain here. Instead, you will be detained and swiftly returned either to your home country or to a safe country where your asylum claim will be considered. Tackling this problem will not be quick. It will not be easy, but it is the right thing to do. Because we cannot persist with a system that was designed for a different era. We have to stop the boats, and this government will do what must be done. Mr. Speaker, we will be tough but fair, and where we lead, others will follow. And I commend this statement to the House.
The Prime Minister also announced Britain had agreed a new deal with Albania to crack down on the number of illegal migrants arriving on small boats as part of measures to speed up the processing of asylum seekers. The number of Albanians arriving in England across the Channel has spiked in the last 2 years, with government figures showing they account for the highest number of people arriving by this route. The issue of migrants arriving on small boats has become a major political issue for Britain's Conservative government. The latest search and rescue operation follows a fatal incident in November 2021, when at least 27 migrants died after a dinghy sank while heading to the UK from France. This year, a record 44,000 migrants are believed to have successfully crossed the Channel. According to data, these crossings involved more than 1,000 boats, with an average of 41 people per vessel.
When Foreign Dispatches returns in just a moment, we'll meet the organizer of a food bank in East London, helping people amid the cost of living crisis in the United Kingdom. Please stay with us. Thanks for staying with us on the programme. For many struggling families, older people and the homeless, the Hope for Humanity Food Bank in East London has become a lifeline amid the cost of living crisis in the country. Set up during the COVID-19 pandemic, the group helps support many pushed into financial hardship by skyrocketing energy and food bills. Our correspondent, Juliana Olayinka, has more on this.
Britain's biggest economic headache is laid bare in poor communities like this one, the London Borough of Newham in East London. High inflation, the country's steepest since October 1981, has pushed many households in this area to the brink. Hundreds of families would struggle to eat if not for the regular support they receive from this community volunteering group, Hope for Humanity.
At 2 p.m, we give you a time. You don't need to wait in the queue.
The food bank was set up during lockdown by philanthropist and local resident Junaid Ali, who tells me he couldn't sit back and watch people suffer through hunger.
And during the lockdown, we witnessed about over 700 to 800 people standing in the queue. So there used to be a long queue in U going end of the street, bending and coming out of the next street. So the operation used to start since morning till evening. So it was a nightmare and people were really badly affected. And especially a borough which is, maybe I think, is the third poorest borough in the United Kingdom. And now you're well aware that crisis of rising cost of living is affecting a lot to the people here. And I can witness one lady who comes to this food bank. She's an 85 years old pensioner, and she said that she never accessed the food bank during pandemic because she could afford it within her pension. But the current rise of cost and energy bills has so adverse effect on them financially that she's been forced to come, no other option left except to come to the food bank, which she thinks is not feel easy to access here because she was never used to that. But the conditions have come to that point but they have no other options left.
With the festive season fast approaching, some of the UK's major supermarkets have announced discounts to assist households with spiralling costs, though Junaid, like many others, think the government must do more.
There's no control on the increase prices increases at all. Every day you go, is prices increase, and it has increased enormous. Means people can't even think to buy something. Here at this food bank, we are providing them exceptional food, which is helping them to cut down some money, saving to pay their bills or some expenses. But the only thing is, when the parents are coming back with the feedback, they have to decide either the rent of the bills or the daily livings. If they pay the rents and the bills, they left nothing in their hand. They struggle, they feel so sad, they can't fulfill the needs of their children.
As the Arctic chill freezes Britain, charities and voluntary groups like this have become a warm lifeline for those who are faced with no other choice.
So in the spirit of giving, back in South Africa, one home in Cape Town is standing out and bringing festive joy to many residents as a family decorates their home in thousands of Christmas lights. The Haynes family aims to share the festive sights with people after a tough couple of years. Take a look.
Matthew Haynes, who fell in love with Christmas lights as a child, has decorated his home with thousands of twinkling bulbs, aiming to bring some festive cheer into people's lives for free after a tough few years. People of all ages come in droves to Haynes' home in the coastal town of Fishhook to see the house decked with more than 200,000 Christmas lights.
I fell in love with Christmas lights when I was very young. Started out with one strand, then 2, then 5, then 10, then, you know, as you can see, more than I need. And it's always brought me joy. I've always made, it always made my family happy when I was doing it when I was younger. You can bring your kids, you can bring your spouse, you can bring your parents, you can bring your pets, and just come in and, enjoy the lights and get some festive cheer, listen to the music, and just have fun.
Despite the worst power cuts by the state power utility Eskom due to aging fleet of coal-fired power stations, Haynes has luckily been able to avoid his electricity being cut off because of his proximity to a local hospital. Haynes and his wife bear the cost of the lights and the electricity themselves.
We are actually on the hospital grid. We don't load shed. So that's only happened this year, and that was a little bit of Christmas magic.
Local resident Matthew Samuels says he found the lights happy and exciting.
This light does give you a festive move. It's really happy and joyful. It's exciting. Just makes you feel the Christmas spirit.
Other residents in the area are impressed by the decorations.
I think I didn't have an idea of what to actually think. My mom just said I want to go and show my son or her grandson the lights. So when we got here, I didn't expect this, to be honest. We were actually just saying it's very impressive.
This house really stands out in the community of Fishhook, and it's very well known, and the amount of trouble that the owner goes through. It's very important, and they're nice, and a lot of the kids come here.
With a display of Santa Claus in the background, children and elderly women dance around, taking in the festive atmosphere.
And finally on the program, let's head over to Bethlehem, the biblical birthplace of Jesus. For the first time since the COVID-19 pandemic, thousands of tourists have attended the annual tree lighting ceremony, marking the start of the official celebrations of Christmas in the city.
Bethlehem, the biblical birthplace of Jesus, was all but closed for the last 2 Christmas seasons due to the COVID-19 pandemic. However, this year, many people gathered to see the giant tree on Manger Square as it was lit with hundreds of colored lights as red, white and green fireworks illuminated the night sky.
I think I felt a little bit confused because of so many nationalities from all around the world, which is great. But once you get closer and you touch that place, which are so extraordinary for us Christians and Catholics especially, it's like heaven. It's warming the heart.
It's very special to be in places that I have only read about in the Bible and heard about. And it's almost unbelievable to be here in this beautiful place and with these beautiful people here.
While grateful for the return of some foreign tourists and Christian Palestinians, numbers are still a far cry from the 3.5 million visitors who came to Bethlehem in winter 2019, just before the pandemic.
This year was the first year after COVID that we started receiving tourists from all over the world. We started receiving quite good numbers of tourists since March this year, and we expected the numbers to be more and more till the end of the year.
The main attractions in Bethlehem are the 4th century Church of the Nativity, built over a grotto, where Christian tradition says Jesus was born, and the 16-meter Christmas tree in Manger Square. Christmas is the absolute highlight of the year for Christians in Bethlehem, bringing together faith and family through masses and family dinners on December the 25th.
And that's the program today. Be sure to join us next time for more stories from around the world. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Tenyola Oyetayo. Bye for now.